So thank you all for joining us. Although, as you said, we thought this was the last panel, but it's not the end. But it is storytelling for social change and impact. And my name is Matasaria Yosef. I'm the founder of Design Week Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's first festival for the creative sector. Today we have Nigist Likkei, a successful director, writer, and producer who works in Hollywood, and whose work often pushes back on traditional narratives featuring Africa. Dr. Ishatu Girma, Addis Ababa University professor of public health and policy. His work merges art and communication to use storytelling as a tool to impact behavioral change. Mr. Henok Gazain of FHI 360 is taking the opportunity to leverage creative platforms and youth culture to impact gender issues and bring social awareness in Ethiopia. And lastly, Dagmawit Kafle of the Dagi Show, who's also an international business lawyer, is using her experiences as a lawyer and a daughter to bring powerful storytelling to all of us. So just to get the panel started, and you can all take the time to answer the question individually. So you're all using storytelling and creativity within your respective fields and platforms. If you can just take some time to talk about, obviously everyone has a story to tell, but what are some of the stories that matter to you? And if you want to share any specific stories that you've carried along the way.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Nikas Likkei, like she said. I am a filmmaker. I was born and raised in the United States, but my father is Ethiopian. So when I was young, I started coming to Ethiopia, visiting my family here. And one of the biggest things that I saw was that what I saw on TV, films, the news was very different in America. What I saw about Africa was very different than when I came here and what I saw. All I saw was poverty, war, disease, bad things on the news about Africa. But when I came here, I saw so many other things. I saw a three-dimensional place, and I saw the most beautiful culture on the planet. So when I had an interest in film. I've always had an interest in film and theater and media arts. So I graduated from Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta. I studied film. I moved to Hollywood, and the biggest, most important thing for me when I started making films was to set the truth about Africa, to show us in a three-dimensional way. So all of my films feature Hollywood stories that intertwine with Africa in a way that empowers Africa, changes the negative narrative that I have seen, and tells the truth about Africa. So all of my films do that. One is called Fat Girls with Academy Award winner Monique. Everything But a Man, which is on Netflix now and was #1 in Africa. And Benanara, which is on Amazon Prime and other places. So I do mainstream films that bridge the gap with Africa and tell empowering stories about Africa. That's what I do.
Thank you all. My name is Shatu Girma. I work for Addis Ababa University at the School of Public Health. I usually teach and do research on health communication or social behavior change communication in the field of public health. So storytelling is one of, the means or the strategy we use, one of the powerful strategy we use for changing behavior in public health. So usually what we are teaching is how to produce quality story materials, like it can be audio visual, or sometimes written materials, because we are really concerned about the quality in public health about stories that we are producing, uh, because storytelling or media or communication or art is not always playing positive role, because it may play also a very negative role. We can mention, for example, the case of HIV. HIV, storytelling, art, communication played a very significant role for controlling HIV in the globe. At the same time, wrongly or poorly designed stories and communication played a negative role in HIV. It fueled the stigma and discrimination, so that it took us billions of dollars, decades for again fighting HIV. So the quality is important, and when you bring storytelling to public health or health communication, there is always a trade-off between the creativity or the art and the medical or the public health science. You know, art, storytelling, it needs somehow creativity, innovativeness, but public health or medical science, it's somehow conservative. We are really always concerned about the science, and always there is a trade-off between the two, bringing two sciences or arts or practices together. So I'm in between, like how to create a balance between the medical science, the truth, and the art or the storytelling. So this is what we usually do, and we really fight with creative people, those who are writing stories, because we want to balance that. So this is what we are doing and teaching to our students and evaluate materials and projects usually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shatou. My name is Heno Gazahin. I'm Chief of Party for the USAID Healthy Behavior Activity. Uh, and usually my career falls between many different lines. I would define myself as communication and marketing professional. Um, um, Talking about storytelling, I think we're grown up through a story. Even when we go to bed, they tell us bedtime stories. And the bedtime stories and the stories in the school, the stories in the family have taught us a lot of things: manners, cultures, everything that we inherited from our parents have passed through storytelling. And those stories, I think somehow we lost it as we grew up. And 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 unfortunately we lost it communicating some of very important behaviors to the people who are in need of those kind of information. And these days, in the NGO world, where I'm working most of the time, we tell people to take medicine, seek health services, and those kind of messages are usually tastes like as bad as the tablet. Madanit item, but now the good way of delivering those kind of very sour and very difficult messages, if we just wrap them around through storytelling, I believe a lot of people will listen to that. And we did a bit of experimenting here and there. And one of the good examples that I would imagine that we have done recently is about uh, uh, advising the youth to choose the proper way of migrating out of the country through labor migration. And I can see some of these TikTokers who have developed content, and those contents through storytelling have been delivered to those who are in need. And I believe that it has resonated with a large mass of the target audiences. Uh, and it has really achieved a great deal of impact, I would say. So, storytelling, if properly managed and if properly delivered, and especially produced, delivered, and consumed, it's a good way of influencing people's behavior in a good way. And it's up to us to decide how we can take advantage of the storytelling expertise we have in the film industries and use them for people to tell their stories to their peers, to their friends, so that they can influence their behaviors and norms and everything. So I always believed, and I will continue to believe, storytelling is a good way of delivering messages to influence people's behavior. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. So, as she explained, my name is Dagmawit. Professionally, I'm an international business lawyer, but I have a talk show called Dagi Show on EBS. So, when I was coming here today, because I think storytelling is very important, and I'm so glad to be here, because we all need to change the narrative. Like in our culture, for example, like when it comes to women, like women cannot do this, girls are not able to do this, and it's like it has become a norm for a woman either to reach marry or to find a way. I think it's working. So for me, when I started doing Dagi Show, the reason I was doing it is I wanted to know, like I wanted everybody to know they are capable of doing anything they want if they put their minds up to it, regardless of their background, regardless of their support system, regardless of their living situation, or even educational status. So when we tell stories, for example, on our show, what we do is we bring people who made it, who are self-made, who never had any kind of support system, who didn't come from money, or who, who nobody would think they would make it in this life. And also when we do storytelling, there is a misconception here. It's like making it means being rich or making it only financially. And our aim on our show is to actually make a difference in people's mindset, so that we can actually raise a generation who can take over our country, who believe in themselves, who can think they can make it on their own, who don't give up just because they fail twice, 3 times, 10 times. Including my story, and I'll tell you later on about me, but I think we all have the potential. We are very blessed to be Ethiopians, to be born here, as long as like we can explore what we actually have at hand, instead of hoping we would find that contentness or that success outside of our country or abroad, because it's another misconception of the stories we've been watching, the movies we have been watching. We've been brainwashed since we were little boys and girls, saying the Western world is better than our own home. So for me, I just want to give people hope that it's possible, it can be done, regardless of whoever is telling us otherwise. And some people, when they tell story, like he said, on TikTok or Instagram, in different platforms, we completely get a wrong idea, and we seem to be very into it. And my aim is, as long as I do the show or in other sectors, to actually avoid negative intentions, even watching negative movies, watching a lot of killings on the movies, or like it's making us hate who we are, where we are right now at the present moment, and we keep wishing to be somewhere else and make it. But this is where we belong, and I think we can make it here as long as everybody's telling the right story. Thank you.
That's actually a great segue to my next question. Now, with the rise of digital technology, we're here at the SmartPhilm Fest, and the social media is prevalent. How do you find ways to, or can you tell me some of the positive and negative aspects of kind of digital storytelling or the digital medium within your respective fields? No, here.
So your question is about the positive and negative of digital media, basically. How many of you guys spend more than an hour a day on social media? Y'all. How many of you spend more than 1 hour a day on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter? How many of you like to be on social media? You guys are not very social media, or either you're not telling the truth. Social media has the power of what they've done a study, and social media actually is very addictive. And we know that addictions are usually negative things. But we kind of know all the negative things that can happen with addiction. So I think the positive ways I want to say that we can use social media is leadership. And I want to kind of segue the question into something encouraging for all of you out there. One way to use social media for you Ethiopians, young Ethiopians, is to lead culture instead of following culture. American and Western culture often are the leaders, but if we ask and stop ourselves why, it's because, going back to the original question of our introduction, it's because whoever leads in film and TV and media and social media now is kind of who leads what everybody else does in the world. I grew up in America, as I mentioned, and I grew up extremely poor in what they call the ghetto. I grew up in a very poor area. I grew up where there were a lot of drugs, killing, prostitution, pollution, just very bad things. And then when I came to Ethiopia the first time when I was 10 years old, my family had a big house with housekeepers, what you call seratinas. They had people to wash my clothes and all of that. I've never seen anything like that in America, and yet it was here, but I never saw it there. Social media, getting back to that, is a way that if you cannot make a big movie or you can't make a TV show on social media, you can show the best things about your culture. Another thing is, I grew up in the hip hop era. I used to be a rapper when I was young, and the hip hop era kind of leads the whole world right now. But Ethiopian music is badass. Like, it is like secondarily, like, or maybe primarily, definitely rivals the best music in the world. And you guys have the power to make it sexy. You guys have the power to be the leaders of culture and make the world follow you guys. And you guys who are here at this film festival with your cell phones, because social media is all about cell phones. It ain't about a big camera. It's not about any money. You don't need no money to make videos that show the world your music, your culture, your style, your fashion. I'm talking about Ethiopian fashion. I'm not talking about following European fashion. How come Louis Vuitton and all those other Gucci and everything, those are leather, right? Is it made of leather? But Ethiopia has, and then I'll give up the mic. Ethiopia has so many cows. Is that true or is that not true? I mean, cows come from leather. Like, why aren't our brands like leading? It's just things to think about. And you have the power to do that through social media, through your little cell phone. We can make our own leather brands that the whole world is buying up, you know, our own Ethiopian Gucci's and Louis Vuittons and all that, and have the rest of the world, including the West, wear our brands proudly. So you have the power through social media without money or anything to do so much.
I think in my field it's simple. Like let's take the case of COVID, yes, the recent phenomenon. So social media, yeah, it really plays. It's quick, fast, accessible for everyone. Anyone can write any story on social media, can share to millions of people at just on one click. Yes, so it's really great, efficient, lots of advantages. Yes, at the same time, it has disadvantages. Like if it is not the right content to the right person and to at the right time, so it's like medicine. Yes, so it can heal you at the same time. It can kill you if it is not the right dose to the right person to the right problem. So that's important, and especially for the young generation. I think I should have omit myself. Yes, you should be wise how to use the social media. Yes, that's important. We have to be careful because it's not only in public health, but it has a risk of losing your country. Yes, there are countries where there were lots of social media revolution. Yes, so it can be dangerous, but we have to be careful what we are writing, especially if we are not really properly trained. Some fields within which need something very technical issue, uh, you have to be careful. Yes, I never share something which I'm not really sure 100% about that content because it may mislead a lot of people. It has a risks. I'm really afraid always sharing anything on my social media platform. Yes, so you have to really think again and again. It's advantageous, but it's a risky business also using social media for storytelling. Yes. Thank you.
I can't agree more. But I mean, we have to recognize the blessing social media brought to this world. And I mean, it's really amazing in a way that we are in a prosumerism where we produce our content, deliver it, and consume it. And I mean, it has really democratized how information is disseminated, and even if information is created, delivered, and received. I mean, it is really a blessing. Always there is a two-way street. I mean, in everything, and social media is not any different. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, and we have to really make sure that the message that we send out has to, in a way that positively influences people's motivation, intention, and provides them the appropriate knowledge. But sometimes, I mean, you cannot always have it all. You cannot always get it right. There is always bad side of it. And I think one thing that I always see is there are always good people who make sure that in all this bad mix, they make sure that the right thing goes through that system. And I, for example, when I look at the Facebook, there is something they call the 5 minutes craft. I mean, the 5 minutes craft is really very interesting way of sharing skills. It tells you how to solve big problem with a little solution. People used it in a positive way to influence and to support people. But also, as we can see in Facebook and also other social media, a lot of bad things can happen. So I would imagine then we have to strongly go out and make the good side of social media and educate people how to consume information. If they do not know how to consume it, it's very difficult because people trust their friends, people trust their neighbors. I mean, in the previous world, through a traditional communication, we used to have something we call words of mouth, where information is shared from one person to another person. And that's very credible way of receiving information. If my friend says so, I would say maybe that's the right information. People believe that the information passed from their friend or shared from their friend is the right information and probably the most credible one. Now we are in the age of something we call e-war, electronic words of mouth, where informations are shared. I receive an information and share it to my friend. My friend thinks that that information came straight from me and trust it. So now we have this powerful tool at our hand with a double-edged sword. And the decision is about us, how to educate people to consume information. Now, we educated them to produce information, and we gave them a platform to disseminate it. Now, it's up to us to educate them how to consume. Thank you.
For me, this digital media, social media is a blessing in disguise. Of course, like media is power, and we can get so much information out of it. We can improve ourselves, we can change our lifestyle and so much more. But also, we are not intentional. Most of us are not intentional when we check out our social media, when we see our Instagram or Facebook. We're not intentional about the information we're trying to find. Rather than us trying to find what we want on social media, we let the social media guide us. We let the news guide us. We let the posts guide us. Most young people right now are valuing themselves by the number of followers they have on Instagram. Oh, somebody has 20,000 followers. Oh, someone has 100,000 followers. So even like when we are posting or when we are trying to use it, later alone consume other information from it, what is our goal? Our goal is finding more followers. Then what? Okay, we have more followers. So what? What's gonna happen when we have more followers? What are we trying to achieve by having more followers? And I see so many young people complaining about them not having enough followers, even though they are posting a lot of content. So social media, if we really don't control our minds, because our mind controls us most of the time, 90% of the time, our thoughts are controlling us. So whatever we read, whatever video we see on social media, we take it for the face value. In our country, like never before, we have come to the point of people torturing people and killing people on social media, recording it, and to the point of then posting the video. Can you imagine what that means? So what happens is some people would watch that, then they get angry. This tribe, some Amhara tribe is killed, Oromo is killed, or Tigrayan is killed. So this is actually creating more difference between us as a country. It caused so much rage for us, for so many people. I see people getting pissed and angry and crying because of the news they see on social media. So if we really, really want to improve ourselves, or if we want to get the right information, let's not let the social media lead us. Instead, let's be intentional about what we're trying to get out of it. We shouldn't let We shouldn't let everything we see on social media get to us. We cannot get emotional or upset about everything. And like he said, once we get the information, we have to be sure if it's worth sharing before we send it to someone, before we forward it to someone. So if we are smart enough, we can actually use the social media for our own benefit, for our society, for the country, for the betterment of everything. But if we are not that smart, we can let it destroy us and our family and our country and the generation too. Thank you so much.
So, as Africans, we have such a rich legacy of an oral tradition and storytelling. And as Ethiopians, we have a really amazing history and culture to disseminate and share with the world. So many amazing stories to share. In what ways have you been able to kind of incorporate your own cultural heritage and legacy in your own works? Here you go.
So as I mentioned in my introduction, all of my films I have made, I love your word, intentional. I have been very intentional with my films to not just be a storyteller. And as I answer your question, I don't want to just tell my story, but I want to encourage you and inspire you how to tell your stories, whether it's with a cell phone, whether it's with a TV camera or a film camera, whatever you're making, you have so much power. How many of you guys know people who want to go to America? I think everybody. And when you think in your mind why you want to go to America, there's a reason. And it usually has to do with opportunity or money. It's the land of great things. As I mentioned about my story, I grew up in America, and America is a land of opportunity, but it's also a land of a lot of other things that I personally experienced. And what makes people want to come to America or to the West is because of what you've seen in movies, what you've seen on the news, what you've seen on television. So you guys are empowered to create a story, not only for yourselves, for your people, but for the world. So in my introduction, I kind of already answered what I've done through all of my films. You can see my films, like I said, on Netflix or Amazon, but all of my films for entertainment purposes, because first and foremost, it's entertainment. Film and TV are primarily for entertainment, and a lot of times people don't watch it for education unless it's a documentary. So your first thing is to entertain. But my challenge to you and what I inspire you to do is not just tell a story because it's cool, because it's interesting, but to think of it as, she said, intentional, and how can I empower myself, my people, this story. So say, for example, you find out there's an amazing story between a guy named Bob and a girl named Sue, and that's what you want to tell the story as, and they have an incredible story. That's fine, but you can also incorporate in that story the backdrop of Ethiopia, Ethiopian music, Ethiopian dance, and actually make it sexy so people want to come here. Again, I grew up in the hip-hop era, and everybody now wants to follow hip-hop culture. Hip-hop culture is the leading culture of the world, but yet the hip-hoppers are the most poorest people in the world, and I'm here to tell the truth. I grew up in that culture. Other than the big, huge rap stars, there's not any money. There's a lot of killing. There's a lot of bad things, but it's made to look sexy. So I'm here to say you can turn that around and make your culture and make people want to come to Ethiopia, empower yourselves, and that will bring economy to Ethiopia, that will bring tourism to Ethiopia, and that'll make people then say, hey, let us bring our money there. Let us get their brands. You guys have so much power, so I just want to keep repeating that to encourage you that film and TV is the most incredible power in the world to influence people, so you have the power in your hands to do that.
Great response. While the other panelists are thinking about their answers, if the audience would also raise their hands for questions so we can open up for Q&A.
Okay, in especially health science field or social behavior change communication, usually what we do is, for example, if a new disease emerges, usually what we do is we really identify religious leaders, journalists, storytellers. Usually we give them capacity building because these are really important people. If they create any misconception or misinformation, then it will create a lot of chaos. So for example, during the time of COVID, we trained the religious leaders, journalists, lots of people, because these are important. They are the screensavers for the message. So we do usually a lot of capacity building, and we identify also means of communication, traditionally like storytelling, like if you take in Afar, they have a communication system called Dagu, and but when we are bringing this traditional system, so we try to minimize the negative, uh, not to be used in a negative way, rather to make it more positive impact. So that's what we do, and we usually evaluate also some communication means because usually a given story or any communication uh, it's not perfect within one time. Yes, so we train them, we give them guidelines, the principles, the creative brief, the objective, what channel, for which audience. Still, there will be a problem. So still, it should be redesigned again, remodified again, because it's a very, communication in general is a very complex issue. Because there is the audience's perception, how the message is designed, when time changes, the context also may change, the science also may change sometimes. So we really try to revise, evaluate, monitor, and assess the impact of all these communication issues that we are doing. So because it's very complex by its nature. So these are what we usually do: capacity building, monitoring, evaluation, identifying also some traditional means of using storytelling. Thank you.
Okay, I have to confess that I lost a lot of opportunities to use storytelling, especially Ethiopian storytelling. And one of the biggest opportunities that I have to cite is Alaka Gabrahana. Anybody who doesn't know Alaka Gabrahana or who knows Alaka Gabrahana? Okay, I understand you don't know. But you know, I usually find it, you know, absurd that we are losing this opportunity to use Alaka Gabrahana for a social critic. He is an epitome of social Ethiopian social critic. And whenever you want to tell somebody bluntly, in our culture it's very difficult, you know. But if you talk about Alaka Gabrahana, everybody laughs, but I mean the story really makes a lot of sense. So there is a huge opportunity in Ethiopian culture, especially a person like Alak Agabrahana. We can use for social critic in a very good way. Like you quote, you know, medicine, sugar coating of medicine, which is very sour, but eventually cures people. And I think storytellers, filmmakers, social and behavior change communicators have to make sure that they take advantage of these social critics to tell stories to people reflect their behavior and act in a right way. So I know you are all here to learn about this. I really advise people to make advantage of Alak Agabrahana. Please you.
For me, like I said earlier, story making is very important, because human beings, we all have stories. We have childhood story, we have stories when we are adults, our family have story, where we came from, our great grandmothers, grandfathers, our history, Ethiopian history, you know, like from years ago, from decades ago, centuries ago. We have so much history to tell, but we have to really be careful about the narrative. That is where we all are failing, I believe. Even our filmmakers or people who are deciding to share their stories. We just, like I said earlier, I really want, this is very, intention is very important for me again. So when we show that if we want the Westerns to know Ethiopia, how do we tell our story? You know, okay, Ethiopia has never, we are the only African countries who has never been colonized. That's an amazing story. How do we tell that story? How independent are we? How proud are we of our culture? How proud are we of ourselves as an individual? What can we contribute to the society? So I think when someone decides to be a filmmaker or a storyteller, that person needs to know the intention. What is behind? What is the motive of telling that story? To be honest, if that story is not gonna motivate anyone, if that story is not gonna touch people's lives, we shouldn't do it. We might as well not do it, because that means our intentions are not right, or maybe we don't know our intentions clearly. So when we tell stories, we know it will reach so many people. We know so many young people are going to watch those stories, those movies, those documentaries. So all I'm saying is, let's be intentional about the stories, because let's remember the kind of stories we get from our parents, the stories we get from so let's not give the bad stories to the next generation. When I say the bad stories that wouldn't motivate, stories that wouldn't change people's lives, are not important story even to be told, I believe. That's what I have to say.
Thank you all so much. Now we'd like to open it up for Q&A. Do I see? Okay, we have one hand in the back.
Thank you so much. My name is Ava. I came from a film school. We came with my colleagues and students here. I'm so happy to see you, especially Nigist here. Thank you so much, to share your experience here. First of all, I would like to thank you, Zaleman, Zalalem, to organize such kind of events for all of us. My question is, the first issue that you raised, we have a lot of social issues, to bring changes. So from personal experience, each of you, can you give us an advice? How, first of all, you mentioned that the one who holds the media who can manage the generation. So what experiences and knowledge you bring from there, that how could we create that strength to bring that changes, particularly for this generation? Because it's my first experience to see such kind of film festivals. Other times, they call it film festival, mostly in Addis Ababa. They show us Western films and we go. We don't have an opportunity to speak and to share our knowledge. So can we listen from you, especially Nigis, since you have experience in the Western media industry? So give us a tips and your experience. What lessons can you share us to be strong and work together and create the change that we are expected in our society? Thank you.
Advice for creating impact and social change.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I have so much passion, and no matter what her question is, usually my answer is always the same. It goes back to empowerment, it goes back to unity, it goes back to the simple answer, honestly, is self-love and working together. One of the challenges in Black America, like I said, hip-hop culture rules the world. It rules fashion, it rules music. The whole world is following that culture. And I was happened to be a part of that generation that ushered in that culture. Ethiopia is like the best kept secret. It hasn't been exploited in a way. And one of the bad things about hip hop culture, living in the neighborhoods, is that they have a lot of gangs, which are equal to tribalism. So if you live on this street and somebody else lives on that street, they're killing each other because of the street they lived on. The sad part, the double sad part, is why are you killing each other over a street? And second of all, neither of those people even own that street. So you're killing each other over land you don't own, property you don't own, and that's another form of tribalism. So it's happening definitely in the Black culture in America, is a lot of tribalism. So even though I didn't grow up in Ethiopia, I understand tribalism, and I can tell you that it's not so much the West or outside factors that destroy a people or a country, it's disunity. Even scripturally in the Bible, a house divided against itself cannot stand. The way I see tribes in Ethiopia is like flowers in a garden. If you guys know what a garden is, a garden has a lot of different things. If it's a flower garden, there's many different types of flowers. They all form together to make a beautiful flower garden. Or if it's vegetables or fruits or whatever. Not to oversimplify things, but unity really is the key. And you youth have to find a way, because most of the tribalism comes from older generations. But when in America, when the Ethiopians are together, there's not all that tribalism. They're together because they're in a country where they're a minority, so they come together. So here, as filmmakers, as young people, tribalism and all of that, even if there's some truth to the reasons why people are not getting along, you have the power in film to bring that peace and unity and ultimately self-love and economic empowerment to yourself. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but it really is about you guys being the leaders to unify this country and also love your culture and your music and your clothes and your fashion and everything else more than you love everything else. Don't try to be Western. Be Ethiopian. Be the best Ethiopian, and the world will follow you.
I'm so sorry, but I think we actually have to close it on that. But I'm not sure if there's much to follow after such a, yeah. So thank you so much for attending and sharing your thoughts on this panel. And thank you all for being here. And that's it.